And just like that, we begin a new project. You know, sometimes drinking water's good for you too. Let's try to hydrate in 2025, folks. I said a new project is starting, and that's exactly what's happening. I am in that moment of time where I know where I'm headed, but I don't know how I'm gonna get there yet. Now, we will touch on the technique I'm about to use and why I'm going to use it and all of the things, but if there's one thing I've learned from the internet, it's that a lot of people don't like it when I ramble on too long at the beginning of the video, so let's just start doing some woodwork. All right, let's start with the obvious thing, which is, guys, these timbers are friggin' huge, man. They're big and they're heavy and they're long, and there's a joke in there that I'm not going to make, but regardless, it's difficult to machine these size timbers accurately. So what you see me working with right now is a piece of poplar that is 8 inches wide and it's 16/4. Now, for those of you who aren't in the US, I don't know how you measure rough lumber at a lumber yard. But in the US, we measure them in quarters. So if I go to a lumberyard and I tell them that I need 4/4 stock, that means it's 4/4 inches thick, which means it's 1 inch thick. 8/4 is 2 inches, 10/4 2.5, 16/4 is 4 inches thick. I don't know why they do it that way. And in fact, if you call them up and say you need a piece of ash that's 2 inches thick, they're going to give you an attitude about it most of the time. Don't ask me quite. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you, but that is what it is. Here's the important thing. When dealing with material that's that thick and that long, again, I'm refraining from making jokes here. It is really important to understand how the wood is going to react to the environment around it. So that piece of ash and that piece of poplar have been in my shop for about a year. So it's acclimated to the shop really well at this point. However, regardless of how long it's been sitting in the shop acclimating, a piece that big, that thick, is likely to have a pretty high moisture differential from the outside of the board to the interior. And that's just because the environmental moisture takes so long to seep its way inside. And what that means in practice is when I rip the two outside edges of the board off, those two pieces are likely to bow. And that's what you see me gluing together here, is the 4 exterior edges that I ripped off that did in fact bow pretty badly. So I glued those together first, milled them flat and square, and then all of the other pieces that I ripped out of the center of all the boards stayed dead flat because the moisture differential from one side to the other was the same. They were all on the inside of the board. So pros and cons of thick wood. Now, here's a fun little tidbit you may or may not know about me. I don't plan out my videos very far ahead of time because I just have to work. I have clients to answer to. And so I don't know if I've told you if I'm making a door yet or not. Chances are I feel like at this point in the video I probably have. But if I haven't and you're wondering what the hell I'm making, that's what's happening right now. So let's talk about door construction and why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. You know, another thing I think is important on the internet is honesty, and this is what my bench looks like right now. And sometimes you push it out of the way for the sake of the camera, and other times you just gotta let it ride and be honest. But that's what's happening right now. Chaos, utter chaos. So, door construction, rails and stiles, floating panels, framing panels, etc., etc. Why do we use them, and why am I using it specifically right now? It's an excellent question. I'm so glad you asked. So here's the thing. We humans have been using doors for a very long time, and we've been making them out of wood for millennia. In the days of old, a door would just sit over top of a hole because wood expands and contracts seasonally, so you didn't have to worry and calculate how that wood is going to move and how it's going to mess up your latching or locking system. Nowadays, in order to keep airflow to a minimum so that we can heat and cool our homes more efficiently, our doors tend to fit into an opening that we can seal and prevent any exchange of environment. Which means two things. Number one, that we have to calculate the expansion and contraction of said door in order that it doesn't jam shut or mess with our locking and latching systems. And number two, that door is exposed to arguably the most extreme variables, the most extreme opposing forces of any piece of wood in your house. Because on the outside, it might be negative 20 degrees or it might be 105 degrees. And on the inside, whatever the humidity level is on the outside, it's probably exactly the opposite on the inside. So that can do a lot of damage to a piece of wood. It can stress it, it can warp it, it can cup it, it can bow it. So how do we combat that? We use something called stave construction in order to get the most stable parts of the wood glued together to create a core that is less likely, not won't, but is less likely to move over time. So here's what's happening right here. I've got all of these little bits of wood in here, and the overwhelming majority of them are predominantly quarter sawn. Quarter sawn material is just the way that they cut it out of the tree, and that is the most dimensionally stable piece of the tree. Any piece of wood that you get that's quarter sawn is going to move less radially and tangentially over the course of the year, and it's going to be less likely to cup, bow, and twist. So by creating a bunch of laminations out of quarter sawn material, this rail or style is going to move substantially less, and it's going to resist twisting and warpage substantially more than if I had just used a single piece of timber. Okay, that's all good and well, but you mentioned frame and panel. Why use a frame and panel? Well, here's the truth. You don't have to. There are a million different styles of door construction. There are slab doors, there are Z-back doors, there are, I don't remember what they're called when they're pinned at either side, but somebody in the comments is gonna let me know.
There's pineapple shrimp, lemon shrimp, coconut shrimp, pepper shrimp.
There's any number of different styles of door construction. The aim with the overwhelming majority of them is to keep the two pieces on the outside at the same distance apart and let all of the expansion and contraction happen on the inside so that that door can fit into an opening more regularly. This is the same reason why we use frame and panels on cabinets, so that when they sit inside the cabinet, they don't expand and contract and lock up. And yes, I've got a whole mess of crap on this subsequent workbench, and I'm not even pretending like I'm gonna clean it up for the camera shot right now. It's just what a workshop looks like when the chaos is happening. So what's the next step then? Excellent question, so glad you asked. This is drying. I'm gonna leave this in clamps for about 2 hours, and it's already been like an hour plus. So whilst this continues to cure, I'm going to mill up the components for the rails, so the top rail, the mid rail, and the bottom rail, and I'm going to laminate them in the same way. Once this is glued up, then I have to wait for the other ones to get glued up so that I can mill all of those components at the same time so that they are the same thickness, so that when I veneer them, they are not differing thicknesses, and that becomes an issue down the road. So it is a multi-step process, and right now, I just got to keep doing mill work, so let's get back to it. Well, I know sometimes I can be an agent of chaos and there's just detritus everywhere. But you know, sometimes you get in the flow and like it literally, the shop just explodes with crap, you know? Sometimes that's okay because it means that you're actually getting it done, and then you can pour a beer at the end of the day and clean it up knowing that for the first time in several weeks, you've actually done some damn woodworking. So it's beer o'clock now. Many of you know that one of my favorite little side projects is to take these live edge offcuts and turn them into small wall shelves. It's super quick and easy, and it gives a great result, just like the new HVLP sprayer from our old friends at ENCurtis, back again to sponsor this week's video.
The ENCurtis HVLP paint sprayer is a game-changing tool designed for small to medium projects like furniture finishing and painting. Engineered with thoughtful, user-centric features, this sprayer simplifies the finishing process while maximizing efficiency and material usage. Now, I want to be clear about something. I am not a professional finisher. I'm a professional woodworker who finishes his own work. And once you get into the world of airflow rates and conversion varnishes and pre-cat lacquers, that's all above my pay grade. So if and when I do spray a finish, I want it to be simple, efficient, and reliable. This HVLP sprayer has a 360-degree rotating suction tube with a magnetic assist, ensuring every last drop of finish gets used. It also comes with a cleaning hose that connects directly to the faucet so I can flush the system after use, and disposable liner bags for quick replacement and minimal downtime. This sprayer is easy to use for any skill level. Just plug it in, fill the container with your finish or paint of choice, and spray. If you've ever sprayed shellac out of a can before, it's about as simple as that, except now you can use just about any finish with minimal thinning and an easy learning curve. So if you want to get into spray finishes but you've been intimidated by bulky or complicated systems, check the link in the description to get an HVLP paint sprayer from ENCurtis. And thanks to ENCurtis for sponsoring this week's video.
All right, let's get back to it. Now, I do want to acknowledge that so much of this video and so much of this project is going to be me just making things flat and square, and then cutting them and gluing them together and making those things flat and square, and repeating the process over and over, and definitely not trying to pick up too many pieces of wood at one time and dropping them all over the floor and having to remachine them because you just dented the crap out of them. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen myself do that. But that is just, guys, that's just woodworking. It's just cutting things out and gluing them back together and milling them flat and dimensioning them how you need to. And I know there's a lot of sexy music montages on the internet, and we try to make that process look fast and easy. But the reality is this video is about 3.5 days worth of work of just cutting things out and gluing them back together and making them flat and square. So if ever you feel like you're constantly banging your head against the wall and everything takes forever, it's because everything takes forever, guys. Now, we will touch on polyurethane glues because I've really started to incorporate them a lot into my workflow, and we'll get into that when I start doing the veneering, but I do just want to acknowledge that I'm also using them to glue up the cores, and that is for a reason.
Well, that went swimmingly. And now it's a little bit of a waiting game. I've got a couple hours before I can take those out of clamps. Maybe about an hour and a half now until I can take them out of clamps, but I'll give it a full 3 hours before I start processing those cores and sizing them to final dimensions so I can press the veneers, which means I can now start pulling the veneers and prepping them and dressing them. So maybe we can get those components pressed today and veneered up so that we can really start thinking about joinery in the future. But right now, because I got a little bit of time to kill, I think it's coffee o'clock. So, we are in excellent shape right now. All of the cores are milled up, everything's glued together, everything is pretty flat and smooth, and I just checked it with the moisture meter. Everything is floating around 9 to 10%, which is exactly where I want it. Had I used yellow glue to glue this up, that moisture content would be much higher, and I would have to wait a few days in order for that moisture to evaporate to get back down to an equilibrium before I milled it flat and veneered over it, which, to be completely honest with you guys, I just don't have time to do. And I was going to use polyurethane glue anyway for the veneers, so might as well just do it all in one shot with the same material. But first, let's just more milling. Let's keep going.
Now, I tried to tell you guys, the overwhelming majority of the video this week is me at either the jointer, the thicknesser, or the table saw. That's it. That's the whole game this week. But little tips and tricks to make sure things are flat. You see me put this little extension behind on a sawhorse that's padded out so it's parallel with my infeed table on my jointer. That's going to help prevent that 100+ inch piece from bowing as I'm trying to joint it. So it's just going to help make life a little bit easier. Now, machining these to final thickness is so important. I'm veneering these with 1/18 inch ash veneers, which means it's not just a simple 1/8 inch under final thickness. So I actually had to bump it up by a 64th, and then I hit 1 3/4 on the money. So I very rarely use calipers in machining and in my woodworking in general, but in this case, it does matter because it does need to finish at 1 3/4 for an entry door. Now, here's a fun note. I have taken to processing thick veneers like these 1/16 or 1/18 rather ash veneers with a track saw. It just makes life a lot easier. And because I'm not stitching these together, I can just rip them and go. And I'm not worried about blowing out on the table saw. I'm not worried about supporting them. So just a little thick foam on the floor and a track saw, that's making my life a lot easier these days.
The amazing thing about furniture is that there's never not 782 steps between steps A and B. It's amazing. But here's the deal. The cores are prepped. They're ready to get pressed. The long veneers are the styles for the veneer. The veneers for the styles, we're going to get there. Those are ready to be pressed as well. There were small minor cracks in them, so I did have to stitch them and put a little bit of gum tape on there. But because these things are 98.5 inches long, and they are absolutely critical that they are flat, I am now going to reformulate my veneer bed, the actual frame, the press, so that I know that it's dead flat. So that's what I'm going to do now, and hopefully have enough time to go get that done before I go home for the night, so that tomorrow can be all about pressing. That's the aim, that's the goal. I'm going to pour myself a beverage and get to work on it. Let's do that now.
You know, some days, guys. Some days I want to acknowledge that by the end of refabricating that veneer bed, I was over it. I was exhausted and tired. And as much as I love what I do and I'm grateful that I get to do it professionally, sometimes work is just work. And I think it's important to acknowledge that on the internet so that when you guys are feeling those things in your own shop, you don't feel like you're the only ones constantly just running your head into the wall when things take 10 times longer than you think they should or need to. Now, I do also want to acknowledge that I am pin nailing these veneers down. Remember, these are thick veneers. They're 1/18 of an inch thick, so they can handle a little 1-inch pin nail. And that's really just a locator because I'm pressing multiple pieces at the same time. So it makes my life a lot easier when I put it in the bag to not have to worry about these things slipping and sliding around. I can just worry about good, complete contact with the bag and the plinth. And listen, if you don't have enough extra length in order to pin them, you can always just use tape. Now, also, a thing right there is I've gotten in the habit of setting a timer for myself when I'm gluing up, whatever the glue up is, so that way I know how much time has passed. And it has really helped me to develop good habits during glue ups, whether veneering or joinery glue ups, so that I am aware of how much time is passing and I don't have issues of glue setting, tacking up, and becoming a real pain in the butt down the road. Now, this process has really kind of reminded me of my days working in cabinet shops as a veneer guy, like just putting things in the bag, taking them out of the bag, trimming them up with the trim router, just a flush bit, and going and pressing the other side. It really was a production run because I was pressing, 6 faces, 7, 8 faces, too many faces. That's how many faces I was pressing, too many. and getting that workflow of how long it's going to be in the bag, how much work can I get done while it's in the bag, taking it out of the bag, flipping it over, veneering the other side, getting back to work. All of that workflow were things that I learned working in cabinet shops. And I tell folks coming out of school that one of the more valuable things you could choose to do is go work in a cabinet shop, even if that means that you're not making standalone furniture, you're not making one-off pieces. Learning the processes that make you efficient in a cabinet shop will come into play when you are making one-off pieces. That is an ENCurtis guarantee right there. Every single place I've ever worked, regardless of what we were making, I have picked up processes and skills that have been employed in my future work as a quote-unquote standalone furniture maker. But once these things come out of the bag, I'm going to put them between two pieces of melamine with a weight on top of them and let them cure overnight so that the adhesive cures and so that these things remain dead flat. Well, friends, that's how you make doors using a stave core interior. Is it a lot of work? Yeah, it is. Is it an unnecessary amount of work? Maybe. I'm sure some on the internet will argue that point because it is, after all, the internet. But I do think it is a step that is worth taking because there is nothing worse than a client calling you up and saying a thing that you made is not functioning properly the way that you said that it would, because then I think that I have an ethical responsibility to fix that thing. So I might as well do it right the first time because that saves me time in the long run. Now, done that. Now, it's time to get cutting joinery on those things. But that is for another video. So for now, I hope you go get in the garage and make a thing. I hope you find some joy in it. And if you're bored and looking for something to stimulate you, maybe go check out the podcast. Maybe go check out the other channel with Larissa. And I don't know, whatever else I got going on. Buy merch, do things. Check out Patreon if you want behind-the-scenes stuff. But for right now, I got to get busy doing other things. So until the next video, friends. Cheers.